Let's meet someone who turned passion for wellness into a billion-dollar business. I'm Kate Save. The Inspired CEO starts now. Welcome to The Inspired CEO, where each episode we explore the innovative wellness practices that are driving success and longevity in the modern business world. In this interview, we speak with Radek Sali, one of Australia's most accomplished business leaders and visionary entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space. From transforming Swisse into a global powerhouse to founding Light Warrior and supporting purpose-driven ventures, Radek shares his passions, challenges, life lessons, and remarkable journey, and how he balances business, family, and personal well-being. Thanks for joining us today, Radek.
Oh, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you've had a tremendous journey, but can you take me back to your childhood? Because I know you've got two very interesting parents as well.
Oh, haven't I? They've shaped me in a big way, both very much into health.
Yeah.
And my father is a professor of surgery, still works full-time to this day. He's almost 85, so works harder than I've ever worked.
I don't know about that.
Well, with his hours, it's just
Yes.
incredible. He still doesn't get home till 7, 8 o'clock. I don't know where he finds the energy. But he's so purpose-driven. He just lives for giving back. And so he, in the 70s, did research on diet causing disease, and he's a surgeon by trade and an oncologist. And so it's quite different for an academic to think that way in conventional medical circles. And so to grow up around a father who was quite frustrated, he'd come home and he's a professor, so he'd lecture me on his frustrations and the work he was doing on diet and how he was laughed at when he'd talk about those things and how things had changed. And it took 20 years for his work to be published in JAMA and Journal of American Medical Association, and also British Medical Journal. And then my mother is a medical scientist, and she would read the blood of his patients to make sure that they had the best of nutrition to be as healthy as they could be to deal with conventional medical treatment. So, combining the best of integrative therapy. So we get the better results by, the best of both worlds, where we're proactive about our health, but then also reactive and dealing with the chronic disease. So, and then Mum would cook amazingly healthy food, and Dad would be on TV talking about prebiotics in bananas, green bananas, and my friends would be laughing. Back in the 80s. So he was involved with the Life Be In It campaign, which are little Munch and Crunch boxes.
Yes.
He was the advisor on that, and what sort of food would go into that to make sure it was as healthy as possible for us children then. So,
and Dr. John Tickell talks about that a lot too. Right. Do they know each other?
Absolutely, yeah.
There we go.
Very good, yeah. He's a good man.
And so then your household growing up was pretty healthy. You got the lectures at home, but what was your health journey? How did you progress from Village Cinemas, and I think it was the Jam Factory?
That's right.
Yeah. And then global roles and COO there.
Yeah.
But how did you get to that?
Yeah, to sort of the background of too, when you got your sort of different thinking parents, they would introduce you to kind of really different things. So my Saturday mornings weren't doing, I did play a little bit of football later on, but it weren't going to football. It was going to Mangala Studios in Carlton, where I'd learned to do Japanese ink brush painting, creative dance, and yoga. And, ink brush painting would start with a meditation where you're breaking down the ink to get it ready to do Japanese calligraphy. And it's this beautiful thing to kind of understand presence from a young age. So, with this kind of background of combining, proactive health and then thinking about what you can do in reaction to it, it just set me up with a way of just thinking differently. But also, with a father who was frustrated, I was never going to go into medicine with, the system as it was. And so I was pretty driven in kind of doing something different. And the coolest thing to do back then was to either work in a video shop or in a cinema.
Yes.
And I didn't get a job in the video shop, but I did get one in the cinema. And I worked with Village Roadshow, which was an incredible place to work because the founders of that business were based in Melbourne. And so the brand and the entrepreneurship was within the organisation, directly permeating, and the big decisions got made in front of you. You'd walk into a storeroom at Crown and the chairman would be walking through and say, I think this should be a gold class cinema.
Wow.
And then it became a gold class cinema, and it was one of the most successful arms of the business. And then you'd also be sitting in there and you'd be watching a new film that they'd just made, and it was The Matrix. And this is before anyone knew what it was about, a couple of months before it come out, and you'd be watching it just make sure that it was all in the right order. But back then it was all in film spools rather than digital. And so we needed to make sure it was ready for action. And you're watching this incredible film that's Australian made, and being alongside these big visionaries. So it was the greatest of apprenticeships, and I worked there for 10 years, and running a cinema had so many different dynamics. The most important dynamic was working with your friends.
Yes.
And learning to be an authentic personality in the workplace as well as outside of it. And this kind of tiresome situation, which I think we've grown out of now largely, where we are a different person outside of work as to who we are at work.
Yes.
Is just cannot, we have to be who we really are.
I love that you say that, because apparently my biggest flaw as a leader by previous people that I've worked with is being the same person. I actually did one of those personality disc tests, and they said I was very unique because nobody is 100% matched. I am exactly the same person at work as I am at home, which is really frustrating for people on both sides of it, but I don't change. And I was told you're meant to be this and you're meant to be that. I tried that for a few months and it absolutely killed me. I was a shell of myself. I hated my job. I hated myself. I hated the people I work with, not because they were bad, because I was treating them the way that I was told I needed to. So I ended that, went back to being myself, and look, not everyone likes everyone. So, I've kept the good ones, and the other ones, hey, oh well.
Well, I always frame it as, some people like to, we always had a very positive workplace, particularly at Swisse, and I always like to surround myself with people that are positive. You do need people to keep it real as well.
To bring you down?
And, bring you down is another thing. But some people just want to be miserable, and they'll be happier in miserable workplaces.
Can't do
so
that.
You're doing them a favour, letting them go to be miserable with others, and you can retain this positivity in our workplace and carry on with purpose-driven actions.
And it's interesting you say that too, because misery breeds misery. And I think these people maybe are happy in that environment because everyone is at their level, so they don't feel the perhaps jealousy of, why are you coming in happy?
That's right.
Why are you not tired? Why are you staying back late? It's 4:58. We're out of here, So do you think you had any mentors at Village or along the journey before you got to Swisse that helped prepare you for Swisse?
Definitely had an extraordinary amount of great leaders, and also an extraordinary amount of people that taught me what not to do.
Yes.
And they're probably ones that create the funniest stories. Like, I had a CEO who wasn't funny at the time, but now looking back on it, it's just extraordinary. He would fire people by saying zap. And he would say things like, if you want loyalty, get a dog, Radek. And I also asked him to inspire our whole management team that, we had 70 odd managers from across the country come and get together before our Christmas trade, which is our busiest time of year, Boxing Day and so forth. And I said, can you say something to get everyone excited? And he said, well, those of you having Christmas off, enjoy your time with your family and friends. And no one was having time off. And then he said, to those of you who are working, bad luck. And you could just see how people reacted to that, and how, it just took the motivation away. And language is just so important. And so many people, if you go to, we go to a personal training for encouragement in the gym, and you can imagine if you went to that personal trainer and they said 10 push-ups in, you look exhausted. A lot of workplaces are that. And so we need to think about the language you bring to the workplace and try and make it as a positive a place as possible.
Sounds amazing. So you've gone from the candy bar to the COO to then, how did you end up at Swisse?
So I was getting to a point where I was 27, 28, and I wasn't going to be the next CEO of Village Roadshow.
Tell me why you thought that too.
There was a 30-year-old CEO that had done the role for a couple of years prior to me, and they weren't going to hire that young again. So I just knew it was my time to leave. And, I'd been there for 10 years. It was, it was something I needed to do, is to change industries and kind of keep my career progressing. in a positive fashion. And so, yeah, I looked to a whole lot of things. I was going to open gelati shops in China. And funnily enough, the business that bought us were from Guangzhou, whereas I was looking to open these ice cream stores in China. The many things you kind of think about doing as you kind of look to do other things. But then it became clear to me that having grown up with the background I had and the passion that had come with the learnings that I'd gained from my parents and the circle of people that we had around us, that there was a great opportunity in nutrition. And so Michael Saba, a very inspiring CEO, came to see me and said, look, we need to grow as a business, and we think that you'd be really helpful in making that happen. And what was really important for me was culture, and Michael and Stephen, his business partner, had a real focus on values and culture, and that for me became an easy transition to go to a new industry.
So exciting for you. Now, when you started at that business, it was what, 10 million, 15 million?
That, I think it's about 13 odd mil.
Okay. And then the next, how many years until the exit? 1.7 billion?
Yeah, well, 1.7 billion was the first tranche, and then 2.1 billion was the final tranche that we sold for. So it was an incredible journey. And yeah, it grew at 50% every year for 10 years compounding. Wow. So the organisation just changed rapidly every 3 months. And so we needed to be a change environment, and change is not easy. We're creatures of habit. We've got words for exactly that. We don't like, we like to think we like change, but we need encouragement to get there. And yes, once we're living change and we're in the notion of it, it's a bit like that gym analogy again. When you go the first time, it's hard, but once you get into you start looking forward to it. So we had to create this environment where change was ever going to be present, and you're either up for that growth or we weren't the place for those sorts of people. So this extraordinary change meant that we had to use a whole lot of really important language, and also focus on our culture. Yeah. And that culture was the point of difference, really. It's the thing that people couldn't copy from outside the organisation. And
you won Workplace of the Year several years in a row, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah. And we didn't really pitch for that until like 10 years into my journey. A bit earlier. It's about 8 years into this journey, because we were really to create culture. It's a bit like creating a great business. Great culture takes as much time and focus, and you need to make it part of your business plan and work on it, and ensure that it continues to thrive with and without you driving it. Yes. The organisation needs to permeate what it stands for, and it becomes its innate success driver. Swisse to this day has won best place to work since I've left for the last 10 years.
Wow.
So it carried on even with the
transaction.
Absolutely. And it was a big part of, making that decision of which partner did buy us. If they had that focus on culture, we knew that the organisation would continue to thrive. Oh,
I love that. And what I found really interesting was the cadence of new product development. Having a product business, introducing new products is so difficult. And you guys were doing how many at a time and how many at a year?
Yeah, I think we'd aim for 10 to 20% every 6 months.
Wow.
Refreshing the range, keeping it sharp, and making sure we're on point with innovation. That was part of this growth plan and part of the change, but also ensuring that we always had the best of products. We always sat as a premium, and that when people took our product, they'll notice a difference and they'll come back to us. We had the highest retention of anyone in the category. So you could advertise then really confidently.
Yes, which has changed, hasn't it? That's a lot. You can't target the way you did. And you had some incredible celebrities. So Nicole Kidman, and who else did you have?
Well, we had so many different ones. I mean, we had
Ricky Ponting,
Sonia Kruger, Oprah Winfrey.
Oh,
we had Ricky Martin. Ellen DeGeneres, Robbie Williams. It was just an onslaught of various people at the Australian Olympic team. I could go on and on. There was someone for everyone.
Yes. Now, it wasn't all that easy though. No. And so at one point you were in $15 million debt personally. And I can just imagine having everything on the line and listening to one of your stories where you actually said to your wife, are we prepared to lose it all, live in a caravan and walk away?
That's right. we needed to, I think in everything you need to understand what's the worst case scenario. And, we do live in a very lucky country where our worst case scenario isn't that bad.
Yeah.
So, I said to Helen that, we could lose it all here. We owe $15 million. I only own 15% of the business. We'd been offered $100 million for the business, but we had $70 million worth of debt.
Ooh.
That would have been left with a $30 million outcome.
Yeah.
Very appealing to my business partners because
that didn't have the debt.
It didn't have the debt. But thankfully, 9 months later, they backed me in, and 9 months later, we got the bigger result of $1.7 billion, and the story carried on from there to 2.1. So. Yeah,
amazing.
Persistence pays.
And that little journey as well. So you had a secret formula with the flywheel. Tell me about the flywheel.
I think the flywheel exists. It's good to great. Jim Collins is kind of the essence of what makes a great business, and what we made sure we had, and we were intuitively doing this before we even knew about Jim Collins, but we did go along and refine it further. At some conferences he put on, and so this flywheel is what you do well, and kind of repeating that. But the most important part of understanding what you do well and what is your path to selling your products and how you kind of create a point of difference in your industry to get cut through.
Yeah.
And that's when disruption happens. And because I came from a entertainment background into a supplement industry that was really driven by health claims.
Yes.
I immediately noticed there was a lack of inspiration or aspiration when people were shopping our category. And so, when I tell people where I worked, I'd say Swisse, and they'd say, what, the embassy? And occasionally I'd say, I take Centrum, and they'd say, why do you do that? And I'd say, Rob de Castello. And I thought, we can do a little bit better than that. Whilst Rob was a fantastic character and so forth, he'd sort of been 10 years out of the sport, and I thought we could talk to people we know who took our product and advertise with it. But we couldn't advertise 52 weeks of the year. We could only advertise in the programs where those personalities thrived. And so Ricky Ponting was our first ambassador. Our second one was Sonia Kruger. That happened because the Priceline buyer, when I presented Ricky Ponting, said, who's that? And I said, I better find a female buyer. So I went home and watched TV with Mum, and she was watching Dancing with the Stars, and there was Sonia Kruger. And we reached out to Sonia. That was the number one program on TV then. And we asked her to be, if she took Swisse, and she did. And we did this deal with her. And then we were actually the first brand to advertise in a lifestyle program. And so you can blame us for all those annoying block ads with every celebrity, every reality TV star endorsing
and then the
products
product
and stuff
endorsement
in there. So it was the first of kind of the real influencer program in lifestyle footage. It happened in sport before. We had to get BBC sign off. It was quite controversial within Channel 7.
Yeah.
But when you're doing that, you're getting cut through.
Yes.
You're breaking the rules. And so this became the basis of the flywheel. But the other thing we learned about it was the importance of talking about what hadn't gone so right. And so me as a leader, I needed to be very honest about when I did things wrong, so I could make the rest of our team feel very comfortable about failure. And, there was 3 times at least where I should have been fired in my journey at Swisse. And I talked to that a lot and what I'd learned about that. And it made me a better, stronger person, our organisation more confident as a result of that.
Yeah.
So, talking to failure helps you improve. And if you think about any great sports people or anyone that's great at, at musicals or in a symphony orchestra, they get coaching and there's permission to coach. And if a team or a sporting team is getting coaching and you see the players disengaged, you know they're going to lose.
Yeah.
But in workplaces, that happens all the time. Disengagement happens as a result of feedback. And that just cannot be the case. So we need to create a level of confidence and safety that it's okay to talk about how we do better.
You joined YPO too, didn't you? And that was really critical to your mental health and support networks and everything.
Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with people of different diverse backgrounds, with different opinions to how you normally go about doing things, just help you centre and also share and vent and get angles on life that are really, really important to keep us on track.
That was actually the first bit of advice when I partnered with Janine Ellis many years ago. She said to me, you need to join EO or YPO or one of these organisations, because you cannot be a leader without surrounding yourself by other people who are going through exactly what you're going through. It doesn't matter what the business is.
Yes.
Everyone in business will have those same same problems, and you can't be in it alone.
Yeah, look, a CEO's role is awfully isolating. You really have to make calls that are tough, and those tough calls are very isolating, and so it is a challenging role. It's something that you can only do for a period of time in your life. It's your choice to be exceptional in what you do, and we spend most of our waking hours in work, so it just made so much sense for me to make those sacrifices that are similar to an Olympic runner choosing to be a 100-metre runner. To be the best in the world, you have to make a whole lot of sacrifices. Now, there are different sacrifices in the business world. If you want to take on that leadership type of role, you need to think about more sustainable practices, but conducive to lifestyle. But also, I feel like that by the time I got to the end of my Swiss journey, I was done. Like I really run my race and had an incredible race, and the team around us did extraordinarily well. We all did very well out of it. But yeah, we all stood up and performed to a very, very high level, and hence why we got the outcome we got.
Now, something I haven't heard you talk a lot about, but I hear about this through other founders and CEOs, and particularly through EO and those organisations, is when people exit a business, no matter what amount of money it's for, it doesn't always sound like there's the party and the happy ever after. There tends to be some lows. What was your experience after exiting? You get the money in the bank and everyone's like, you're going to have the best time of your life now. Everything will change. How did it change?
Well, I think Jimi Hendrix said it, the journey is the destination. And so, when we got the deal done, I just remember calling Helen and saying, we got it done. And she goes, what are we going to do? And she was like, can you just make your chicken soup? I'm coming away.
Chicken soup, I love that.
And so we sat around and did that. And so I still had a year and a half of earnout and so forth. And that earnout was, in the end, was more valuable than my first chunk. So I was pretty heavily incentivized to make sure that went well. But it was challenging with a new partner and so forth, and different cultures. And thankfully,
and it's your baby, isn't it?
Well,
and everything.
you're just letting go. And to be honest, I'd kind of let go of my baby a couple of years earlier, knowing that it'd become such a big organisation. I didn't have the connection with the team like I'd had along those extraordinary years in those earlier days.
Yes.
And I didn't know everyone's name. And I was on a plane 3 weeks of every month. So it takes a very different CEO to run that sort of global organisation. And I could do it for the period I did it for, but I was ready to let go. But letting go was whilst that was easy, stopping afterwards, whilst I had things going on and I was thinking about the next chapter, well in advance of the actual time when I finished at Swisse, it still meant that suddenly there was this level of safety that I hadn't felt before after living on the edge like I had, where the threat of going bankrupt was very real, and also just the pressure of work and stress and decisions we were making. You don't realise the magnitude of it all until things go whoo, and you suddenly. You look back and you go, oh, you're safe. And so all the adrenals fall away and exhaustion kicks in.
Really kicks in, yes.
And so, so there was some level of trauma as a result of all of that I needed to deal with. But, it could be worse and we got through it.
What does recovery look like from that though? Because I have heard so many people go through that. When you're in burnout, you don't always stop, you just keep going. But then when you have to stop, it's not like you take a week off and you feel better. How long did it take for your body to really readjust?
I'm still adjusting. I still have moments of going back to that place where my brain didn't function as with the clarity I once had and worry about that happening again.
Yeah.
But I have moved beyond it, and it doesn't affect me like it did at the point where I'd be talking in front of big groups of people, which I used to do and still do to this day quite regularly, where my train of thought would just dissipate.
Right, yes.
And I just could feel myself not being as with it as I was, or as in a conversation, and my head would be just not all there. And so the practice of kind of meditation, which I've taken on, religiously in my role at Swisse, where I'm doing it twice per day for 20 minutes, and walking and not doing, drinking alcohol, and doing things that, would help me kind of relax for short term, but not the long term. Doing things like going for a walk with my wife every morning. So my circle of influence was really well in control, but the out of influence stuff was what got to me. But ultimately, because I didn't have the chaos that was ensuing of this global business, that I clearly wasn't the right person to keep running it. It meant that I could stop and just make sure that I focused on what counts, and also make sure that I surrounded myself and worked in businesses and with people that really inspired me. And hence this next chapter of what Light Warrior is, where we bring light to the world. We're the warriors in doing that. And our foundation's called Light Folk, so we provide for the good folk that are bringing light to the world. And we need more light in this world at the moment, don't we?
And I believe that was your nickname from your wife, Light
That's
Warrior.
Right. She called me that when she first fell in love with me. So what a cool name to go with. So that's our investment.
And let's wrap with your current health regime, because you've got so much knowledge about all of this. But what do you practice? What you do meditation. What does your food, nutrition, supplements look like? Yeah,
so I try and eat mostly vegetarian food. I eat a bit of fish. I'll have red meat once a week. And I say try because it doesn't work that way functionally with life, and that's okay. And we do need diverse range of foods, everything in moderation. But I've done my gene test, and a Mediterranean diet is
amazing. Me too. Love it. A little bit more fat and not have to worry about calories so much, but really whole foods.
Exactly. And so combining that with exercise too. So I go to the gym at least 4 times a week. I do yoga once a week. I love to do paddleboarding out amongst nature. And that's a beautiful thing that just balances me. And I try and play golf. I'm not very good at that, but these social elements are really important, where you get to vent and talk about life and go slow for 4 hours, even though sometimes it feels extraordinarily slow with my golf game. But, I think finding those things that you enjoy is really important. You should look forward to what keeps you well in life. And then that makes it an easier habit to stick by.
And so your product, for anyone that's looking for really, really natural supplements in a liquid form, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've got a whole plant-based nutrition brand called Wanderlust. It's based on Ayurvedic principles. So yoga is important to the movement part and the meditation part, which is where yoga, where meditation came from. And then you've got these plant-based supplements, herbals that have been around for hundreds of years, and it continue to be now proven with modern science in kind of great health outcomes like turmeric for brain function and inflammation. And so we do whole plant liquid extracts, and we don't have any excipients or fillers in there. So it's all natural. And you'd think natural products are all natural. All of our products come from a plant. They're whole plant-based. And even our algae oil, which is an omega-3, instead of, fish really we should eat. And so instead of supplementing with omega-3s from fish that we should be eating for nourishment, we use algae. And that algae is great for the climate too, because it sucks up carbon in the growth process. So there's just great ways, and particularly with plants too, the same sort of thing happens too. If we can do this in a more natural format, we're going to make a more sustainable lifestyle here on this planet.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining the show, and we'll be right back.